For ZDNET, I'm Dan Patterson, and today's interview is with Recorded Future CEO Christopher Ahlberg. Now, Recorded Future is a threat intelligence platform, and Ahlberg goes into depth on how hackers, bad actors, and cybercriminals are using generative artificial intelligence to worm their way into systems, and conversely, how defenders are using AI to protect networks that are critically important, like critical infrastructure, water, power, stuff we rely on. But this is not just a cybersecurity interview. Ahlberg goes into the future, the near future, and how emerging technologies, stuff that might seem like science fiction, like Neuralink and technologies that connect our brain to the internet, could be exploited by bad actors. It's a fascinating interview. You have to watch what he says about the future of AI. Christopher, generative AI platforms like ChatGPT and others are kind of taking the world by storm right now. And certainly cyber defense and threat intelligence experts are using these, but so are the bad guys, hackers, bad actors, and other creative forces have utilized these platforms. Have you observed hackers utilizing generative AI in their cyber attack strategies?
Yeah, no. So first of all, obviously, any new technology, pretty much, gets used for both good and bad. You think about sort of it's a pretty amazing time now, isn't it, to live in this sort of just seeing the stuff coming along, and like when the internet came along, or the iPhone, or what have you. So that's exciting in itself. And so for sure, same thing here. Generative AI, or the sort of I like to just call it text generated by AI, is pretty amazing what it can do. And so if we have seen mostly cyber criminals using this as opposed to nation states. Maybe the cyber criminals are more ingenious. They can be faster of trying things. They sort of have to be more ingenious and faster. You could argue that maybe in some, whether it's in the West or among our adversaries, but using these sort of techniques in an aggressive fashion probably is still stuck in approval stages and so on. But we have seen it, and mostly among criminals.
What makes these AI-driven attacks particularly challenging to defend against?
So I would say, so first of all, maybe to unpack AI-driven attack, I would call it AI probably enabled. And as we know, the sort of one of the absolutely key vectors in the world of cybersecurity is phishing. And so when somebody's going to put together a phishing email, that takes some ingeniousness. It takes some, we might like to talk about spear phishing in general. These emails are fairly generic, but even so, if I'm going to take, whether I'm doing something that is based on a current event or targeting a certain kind of bank customer or, what have you, I have to go to work on it. And if I'm a cyber criminal who's sort of going around the world, I actually have to do some work to make sure that it works in the US, it works in Denmark, it might work in Indonesia. And so just a very simple thing of like helping me to be creative, to quickly work through a set of cases, sort of approaches to writing, and then do it in a way that the language comes out in a good way. And we've sort of all laughed at bad phishing emails. So I think you don't have to think very creatively to realize that, man, this can actually help these guys be authors, which is a problem in itself.
It's so interesting that generative AI is helping cyber criminals and bad actors in the same way it's kind of helping everyone else, compressing time, making the product a little more efficient and a little more natural. What about on the flip side? Can generative AI help with attribution? Can it help threat hunters identify threats?
Absolutely. So if you think about intelligence, and we've sort of been in this world of cyber threat intel for probably, and more general intelligence also for maybe the last 12 years or so. And we've collected a lot of data. And we like to say that you think about this intelligence cycle, which says that you want to go come up with what sort of data you're going to get your hands on. You're going to go collect it. You're going to munch it, crunch it, whatever you're doing with it, and you're going to analyze it and get it to the person, disseminate it. And we worked on automating a lot of collection and crunching of this. But the actual analysis phase and the writing phase has still been pretty manual. And it's pretty remarkable. So over the last couple of weeks, we've launched the first version of Recorded Future AI that uses GPT techniques to be able to both help connecting dots across lots of data as well as writing. And it's pretty remarkable. I think, you as a journalist appreciates the importance of writing as part of thinking. And what I think this fundamentally is doing is that it helps us connect dots in a way that's hard to do otherwise. And it allows us to use text, writing, as sort of an integral part of our thinking process that I actually think will make us smarter. So there's incredible ways to put this to work in intelligence, and we're super excited.
So this might be kind of aligned. Like you said, I know you've been working in artificial intelligence for a long time, but you also, not just you, but organizations like you specialize in open source intelligence as well. How does AI kind of blend these automated systems with OSINT techniques?
So I think of generally the word OSINT, these definitions of these words ends up being problematic. But I think the big thing that the internet did in all of this is that the internet sort of became the place where all the world's information migrated onto. Both the somewhat open and sometimes, as we've seen over the last couple of weeks, some not so open, pretty secretive stuff ends up on a stupid Discord server, what have you. And so we've obviously spent a lot of time at Record Future to pull in all this information, organizing it, and so on. But it's still, that once you want to pull this sort of information together, and whether it's sort of helping you connect dots across not just OSINT type writing stuff, but also technical information or, very sort of information that is non-obvious, and connecting those dots, these large language models are doing pretty magical things there. Maybe magic is the wrong word, but pretty amazing ways to sort of speed up that thinking cycle. I've always talked about that we want to enable, I said this sometime in 1991 or something, I don't know, something like that. We want to speed up the analysis cycle and help us analyze at the speed of thought. That's a very hard thing to do. And I think we're sort of seeing a breakthrough here, which is pretty exciting.
So I wonder, speaking of those Discord servers where secrets end up, look, are there ways that generative AI can help organizations, whether it's an enterprise, an SMB startup, or even a government agency, proactively prevent leaks or find flaws and holes?
So maybe. I think some of that might be simpler. There were pretty good markings on these docs. It said things like Five Eyes, the FB Five Eyes sort of thing. It said non-foreign and non-foreigner and TS/SCI/ the sort of markings that you find on secretive docs in the US. And by the way, France, Germany, Singapore, whoever all have, or in China and Russia have the equivalent markings. And the simplest thing in the world is sort of just go search for those docs and put a Google alert, put a Record Future alert on them. We might reach some places where that Google don't reach. But so before you get to the generative AI, I think where that becomes more interesting is now you can start saying things like, because if you start looking for just the word top secret, you're going to get a whole lot. So you could use the generative AI to help you summarize that in a way that you can maybe more quickly find things that are out of the norm. You might be able to connect dots. You might be able to sort of deal with foreign language content in ways that you wouldn't have done either otherwise. But I do think that maybe there's some lower hanging fruit that there before you get all AI on that problem. So,
what are some of the ethical considerations when it comes to threat hunting and generative AI? I know, kind of broadly, when we talk about ethics in AI, there's all sorts of bias issues and other challenges. But specifically to cyber and threat hunting, are there any ethical considerations?
Yeah, no, I think, intelligence is going to help you make better decisions, or is supposed to help you make better decisions. To be able to do that, you have to you clearly have to have sort of good thinking, and good thinking is should not be biased. So you clearly can't work with a model that is biased, because if that's biased, you're just not going to get you into a good place. We've done work where what we've done is to take our threat intel reporting for years back and then train the model on top of GPT that then knows how to write intel reports and knows how to connect dots in that world. So I think bias can be important here. You got to be clear about ethics here. And I think the most sort of key part from an ethical point of view is actually to make sure that you don't have those biases. Now, it's a subtle world. Is our threat research biased towards Russia and China? I'm sure it is. You also got to be able to be clear-minded about this. I wouldn't, but in the end game, absolutely, there are a lot of ethical considerations with intelligence for sure, and to some extent, you might introduce some additional issues here. I think that the real ethical sort of point of this comes when if you try to take the human out of the loop and now automate some of the actions, that's when you've got to start being real careful. We're still thinking about this as something as a capability that we introduce next to the analyst, next to the decision maker, to make them smarter and stronger. I think if we start taking humans out of the loop and make decisions, now we have to be more careful.
So I know. Look, I love talking about AI, and I know that your company kind of rests on artificial intelligence, but it also feels like a very now thing. This is a trend that is emerging not just with consumers, but with business and government, and it's important. But when you step back, when you, Christopher, step back and look at the emerging technology landscape, what do you think about the next, not just 18 and 36 months, but how do you plan for the future and technologies that are still emerging or still gestating?
It's a great question. So first of all, Dan, I would think about it like, if I go back to your point, look back. So I met my co-founder of Recorded Future, and actually my last company, from the first time in 1991. I actually took his AI class, Stefan Trey's AI class, in university, spring of 91. So we started talking about these sort of things 30, is that 32? That's sad. 32 years ago. So, this to age ourselves. We'd like to think that our brains are still sort of at least semi-functional. But so that's sort of one thing. And through those years, we've sort of, the words have been, analysis became analytics, became big data, became machine learning, became AI, and now it's all generative AI and So I'm slightly jaded with some of that, for sure, but on the other hand, sometimes through these sort of approaches, there are bursts of periods of bursts where you sort of do these steps, hops, whatever you want to call them. And it feels like one of them, where you can sort of be very aggressive, and we've sort of leaned in at Recorded Future to be very sort of this felt like a moment in time where we could do some really fantastic progress, and we did in short order, less than 90 days, just like boom, ran with it, and now we think that it sort of opens up a whole bunch of things. Now, is this sort of continuous straight up? Is this an S curve here where we're going to find some sort of element to where it can get us, and then it's going to take us years before we get to the next level? What do I know? That's not for me to sort of. I'm a happy user. I don't know if these LLMs or large language models are going to take us to the next level. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I'm sort of happy either way. We continue to be good students of what's around us, whether that's sort of new intelligence source or new approach to storing data so we can get to it fast, or in this case, new sort of approach to how to process the information. All this stuff is super exciting, and I try to be a good consumer, try to be clever about how you string it all together. But making the actual prediction, even as the CEO of a company called Recorded Future, I'm not going to try to make that prediction.
What keeps you up at night?
I have sort of two answers to that question. One is that I think I sleep pretty well. So not a whole lot is the sort of the one. But at the same time, I think, we sort of live in a world that is pretty interesting right now, that over the last 25, 30 years, the world have sort of slowly migrated onto the internet. Go back to, I mentioned 91, 92, when the sort of web browser came along and the internet became the web. And that's sort of been a very interesting transition. I've pretty publicly made the point that I think during the next 25 years, the world becomes a reflection of the internet. And now we live in an internet-centric world, and then controlling reality, it's going to be incredibly important. And reality is you could always say that you've been able to shape realities, and people have done psyops and info ops and these sort of things, but with the internet you can do pretty crazy things, and it's one of those totally asymmetric type things where you don't need to be China or United States or China or Russia to be able to do it. It's a very asymmetric sort of thing. So the threats that we can see coming from this are uncomfortable, and we're going to have to be very vigilant. Obviously, at Recorded Future, we're sort of excited. I don't want to be excited about a threat, but we think we have a key role to play to help out in this, because if it's realities can be bent and shaped, the having good intelligence to figure out what's actually true and not. And actually, there's some pretty incredible things we think we can use this sort of generative AI for that. But in I would just sort of like when pretty much anyone can bend reality, that's scary. So let's watch out for that.
You answered this final question for me. I'm glad you took things from micro to and threats that we experience today to macro. And you're right. We are living in a period of time where we are digital and our values are digital. We have crossed a threshold. And so I wonder if we can zoom out instead of the micro and look at the macro. With a lot of these talks about ChatGPT and generative AI, it's fun to kind of speculate about super intelligence and the future of highly intelligent machines. But tell me about the future of highly intelligent or threats augmented by highly intelligent machines. What is the big picture in terms of the scale of threats in the long term?
No, there's no question that there's some serious sort of there's a reason some smart people in the world are saying this. Hey guys, go slow. I'm not one of those who believe in a pause, because frankly, China is not going to pause. Russia is not going to pause. So our adversaries are not going to pause. And, frankly, about 2-3 years ago, there was a lot of talk about, China is going to win the AI game and da 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 da. And lo and behold, who won yet another time? It was a San Francisco-based company with 400 people. Boom. And just, like, go figure. go San Francisco. You have to give it to them. It's pretty amazing, and good for America. Good for America. The battle is not over by any means, but pretty amazing. That said, I think there are some things that are scary here. That if a human with bad intent has capabilities to execute very fast, if we get very specific into sort of like. You have a machine, there's been these DARPA tests and whatever they call them, challenges around hacking. How can a machine hack a system sort of thing? And could, I don't want to say super intelligent, you said it, but, like a machine that has high processing capabilities, could that have an ability to just, we see scanners around the world, if those scanners are 1,000 times faster, and then when they wedge their way in, they can sort of get all the way down to the price, information security, it's going to be difficult. Now, that just means we need to sort of put the good stuff to defend it on the other end. Now, then, of course, the other scenario is where you sort of have totally autonomous machines, and people have all kinds of worries about self-awareness, and they sort of run off and go amok and this and that. So that machine in San Francisco is probably good if we keep the ability to pull the plug. But it's probably not going to be that sort of moment. It's probably more something that's going to seep into society more and more and more. And I think we as humans are going to have to sort of, it's not so much about having to pull the plug sort of moment, because it's not going to be like that. There's going to be a million plugs to pull, and it's just going to be too hard to think about it that way. But we just got to design products, design machines with clarity about who's in control. And there's, some pretty interesting societal sort of things in front of us there. We worry right now about TikTok getting into people's heads, but if TikTok or some equivalent totally is wired into your head, if you have a Elon Musk Neuralink thing in your head, and that's live wired to TikTok, and some dude in China, at MSS, Ministry of State Security, figures out how he can apply some generative AI sort of thing to generate memes or themes or whatever you want to call them, to sort of micro target populations with that in the West, you could do bad stuff. There's no question. So no, but I'm not, that scenario that I just said, it's not a crazy scenario at all, actually. And it's probably a 5 to 10 year scenario. So I think we got to be very careful about some of these things. And I hope we can have, both lawmakers and judges and courts, and who really understands this. And that's why I think it's going to take some alliances between the technical geeks. I'd like to think myself in that camp, and the other side of things, to really figure out, what do we want our society to be like?
For ZDNet, I'm Dan Patterson, and for more interviews like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And to learn more about emerging technology, please visit zdnet.com.